Hey everyone, hope you are all doing well today. Welcome back to another video in the Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course Lesson Book Level 2 series. This is Lesson 4. We're going to cover pages 10 and 11 today. Technique Builder passing 1 under 3 and the piece Roman Holiday. Well, once again, guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for following. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, go ahead and do that. So that way you can stay up to date with all the latest lessons that I post and any other videos that I post that are both music related and or nature related on the channel. If you get a chance, go over to my Patreon page and be sure you follow along over there. Donations are always most appreciated. And for those of you who are following, and especially those of you who have contributed in the donation department, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. And I'm just looking forward to getting back to making some more videos. So I've been slow lately, and this happens from time to time. So again, thank you for your patience. This time I am actually have a different excuse. It's not work, although work's always busy. And here I am getting closer and closer to the holiday seasons. But I am actually, I've been devoting a lot of time to a new office space that I'm building at my home. It's actually in the I will call it a basement, although it's really a glorified crawl space that I've converted, put in flooring and put in some vent work and put up some walls and nothing fancy, but I am actually going to have a dedicated space at home where I can set up another keyboard that I have there. And hopefully in the long run, this means I can produce even more content. So the video that I'm making now and all the videos I've made so far at my channel have not been at home. They've actually been at my workplace, which sometimes is great and sometimes I get interruptions. You don't need to know all the details, but anyways, that is what my time has been committed to recently. And thank you for being patient, but we're going to go ahead and get into this video. So like I said, we're on pages 10 and 11. And if you remember the previous lesson, lesson 3 in our book, we worked on passing 1 under 2 with our fingering. The piece that we did, which was light and blue, if you recall, that was almost entirely in the right hand. Now, in this piece, Roman Holiday, which we'll get to in a little bit, you are going to have the opportunity to do this technique in both hands. So that's good. So we don't want to ignore the left hand because from time to time, this technique is just as important in the left hand. Now, if you have any experience with scales, which we have had some experience in lesson 1 of the Alfred series, this fingering should seem a little more familiar. Because when you do scales, for example, the C major scale, you start with your thumb and you go to 2 on D, 3 on E, and then you cross your thumb under on F. And that's actually what we're going to do today. Not necessarily on just the C major scale, but you can do that pattern really on any key. Now, it'll just be the white keys, And it's basically just 1, 2, 3, and then your thumb comes under. And you'll see in a moment we're going to do the same thing in the left hand. So we're going to start with the technique builder and just review this. So a couple of points there. It says keep the wrist loose and relaxed. That's always very important. You never want to tense up. You never really want to tense up on any piano playing. I can't think of any situation where you'd want to be tense. You definitely want to always be relaxed. Avoid any twisting of the wrist as one goes under 3. My philosophy about that is over twist. Don't over twist. There has to be maybe a little bit of twisting. So watch as I do this. There is a little bit of this twisting motion, right? Now, they probably mean don't overdo it, but I just can't imagine not having any twist at all, right? You got to have a little bit. But when that thumb comes under, don't twist the thumb maybe. The thumb, without getting into too much detail, the thumb kind of moves horizontally. You see how that thumb's coming across like this? So it's not like, I'm going up like that. Now, if I were going to go to like an F sharp, yeah, but, well, we won't get into that because you wouldn't actually use that fingering if you were going to F sharp anyway. So don't overthink it. But I want you to realize that just because it says avoid any twisting, don't think, oh, I can't do any twisting. You can. You can do some, like I showed you. And you don't want to be perfectly horizontal with your movement. You don't want to go straight across. I think a little twisting is actually a good thing. So I don't know exactly what they mean by avoid any twisting, but I think a little twisting actually is necessary. So go ahead and twist a little bit. Move the thumb under the hand as soon as it plays to have it ready for its next note. So this is true. When they say move the thumb under the hand as soon as it plays, I'm thinking the third finger. Because obviously you can't move the thumb when it's playing. The second finger, you don't want to twist under your second finger. It's really that third finger. That third finger, as soon as that third finger goes down, then you're... Now, my thumb is moving, yes, but the big move comes maybe under that third finger. So again, details, which they don't really address details very well, but that's the moment, okay? And really you just want it a swift, sort of smooth, and again, relaxed, I agree with that, process. Play slowly at first, then gradually increase in speed. That's a given. Anytime you learn something new, start slow, go faster. So we're going to start with the right hand on the first line. Now, I want you to focus on the pattern. Remember, the pattern is 1, 2, 3, and then you cross under 1, 2, 3. So don't focus so much on the notes. Focus on the pattern. Remember, I said it's all white keys. And there is a pattern here. So the first 2 measures is that first pattern, these first 2 measures. The next 2 measures is the second pattern, right? And then the third pattern. But it's all the same pattern. So the first 2 measures, you start on middle C, C, D, E, cross under, and it stops on A. So it's basically 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you want it to be a smooth, continuous motion. You don't want to do this. Right? You don't want to get in that habit. So just because there is this cross under motion doesn't mean we break up and take a pause there. They're still all quarter notes, and there is a legato marking underneath them to be smooth. Now, if you need to start that way just to get the motions, that's fine, but you got to work your way up to being smooth and consistent, okay? Now, the pattern repeats itself on the next 2 measures. It just starts on D. And then the second line, it starts on E. And then the last 3 measures, it's the same pattern starting on F. And it just comes back to C on the very last measure. So that's what I meant by just follow the pattern, because it's the same fingering and it's kind of the same feel every time. And then the whole thing repeats, but that's up to you. You're probably going to end up repeating it quite a bit to practice it. Now let's look at the left hand. The left hand's the opposite. You're starting on middle C and you're going down. 1, 2, 3, and then your thumb comes under. So it's the exact same pattern, just the opposite. The next 2 measures starts on B. And then the bottom line starts on A. And then the last three measures goes down to B and then back to C and ends right there. So that's basically it. So obviously before you go on to Roman Holiday, you want to practice that. You don't want to just practice the fingering and making sure you get the right notes, but you want to practice it so it becomes effortless. It becomes a smooth motion. And of course, your timing is even and accurate. It doesn't have to be super fast. Now, Roman Holiday, as you heard in the previous recording, says allegro moderato. So it moves. It's not a slow piece. It's kind of on the quick side. So again, if you want to, learn this piece slow and you don't really like it and you say I'm ready to move on, that's fine. Speed is usually the last thing, but obviously, if you want to play it fast, you're probably as always going to need to start slow. Now let's dig in with the right hand first, because this right hand gets right to it with this pattern. We're in 4/4 time, so it's good to note that the very first measure is an incomplete measure. It is on beat 4. Since there's only one beat in that incomplete measure, just remember you kind of work backwards when you're finding out how many beats are in that first measure or what beat it starts on. It's beat 4. Now there are eighth notes, so you know the counting: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we'll do that in this piece because there's a lot of eighth notes, pretty much almost every single measure. So right off the bat, those first two eighth notes are 4 and. But we're going to get into the notes and the fingering. And it says play the eighth notes evenly. You see the little asterisk there, and it states it there at the bottom of the page. We just did Light and Blue for like forever, right? Because that was a hard song. That took a long time. And that was all swing, if you learned it up to that point where you put in the swing. So you're probably used to playing swing now. So we want to make sure we get back to even eighth notes, a more classical style in this piece. So the very first note is E with the thumb. Now, let's go slowly through this pattern. It's just like your exercise, but it's actually going to go even higher, in other words. So we got thumb on E, 2 on F, 3 on G. Then the thumb comes under on A, B, C, and then one more time, thumb under on D, E, and then F is where we end that pattern. So you see there's a big legato marking, so you want it to be smooth. Now the irony is this. Remember when we did the technique builder just a moment ago at the top of the page, I said play evenly. Don't pause. Whoops. Don't pause here. They actually have this piece written in a way where you do pause, because there's a quarter note, right? So check it out. You've got eighth note, quarter note. So you have to hold that. So you're actually pausing. So that should make it easier, right? So you got 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then you're off on beat 3. Now remember, also in the technique builder, we said the pattern is repetitive. It just starts each time on the next higher note. Well, that's what's happening here. I'm sorry, except it's on the lower note. Excuse me. But it's the same idea. So you started the piece on E. Now on beat 4 in the third measure, or the second full measure, you start a note lower, D. But check it out. It's the exact same pattern. 3 times you go through it. And again, because that quarter note is the note right before the cross under, that's almost like a cue. That gives you that helps you remember, after that quarter note, after the hold, that's when you're going to cross under. So once again, it's 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then you're off on 3 and there at the top of 11, same pattern starting on middle C. Which is on beat 4. So 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and then same pattern again, starting on another note lower, starting on B. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and you're off on 3 and. Now, where we stop, that is the first ending. So you repeat back to the beginning. And you play through everything we just did again. And when you get to the first measure on page 11, you're going to skip over to the second ending, which is our first measure, and I think our only measure. One of our only measures that has no eighth notes. You just have 3 quarter notes. C, skip up to E, back to C. Notice the E and the C that you come back to are accented, and your left hand's accented there. That's just gonna provide like a strong finish, because when you're gonna repeat the whole piece, and you're gonna actually go to that second ending again because it says fine. So those accents make even more sense when we come back a final time and we close out the piece with those accents. So the right hand, obviously, you want to work on first, just this first section. But again, study the pattern, study the fingering. It's going to be a lot easier. And the rhythms are the same too. It's the same rhythmic pattern. So if you look at the bigger picture and look at these, the pattern repeats itself 4 times and it starts a note lower each time. That's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a whole lot easier than just looking at this as random notes, random fingering, random rhythms, because it's not random. So at the beginning, right, and then it just starts a note lower, excuse me, etc., etc. Now, when we put the left hand with it, of course, that's going to make it feel a whole lot different and a little more challenging. But get that right hand down by itself and you realize all those patterns are very repetitive, you're going to be in good shape. Now, before we go on, let's look at the left hand, because the second half of the piece is very different. I wouldn't say very different, but different enough that I'm going to focus on the first half. Now, the left hand by itself is actually very easy. There's a couple of ways to look at your left hand. Review these chords with me first. Basic chords. C major in root position. Remember, C, E, G. G7. That is in inversion. So G's not at the bottom. B is at the bottom. F and G. And you might remember the third one, the F chord. So these are the first 3 chords we learned in the Alfred series. Remember? That may feel and sound like a very familiar pattern, and it is. So your left hand is playing one of those 3 chords. Now, it's playing it in a broken format. So if you look at the first full measure on page 10, you're resting on beat 4 in the incomplete measure. But on that next measure, you see the C that's written above the treble clef. And in the next measure, G7, remember, those are the chord names for your left hand. You could go off of those if you wanted. But first, you got to understand the note pattern here. You play the bottom note of whatever this chord is. And when I say whatever the chord is, it's not just, the name of the chord. It's the position, right? So for the G7, you're not going to play a G at the bottom. You're going to play the B. And for the F chord, the C. So going back to the C chord, you play the C on beat 1, and then the other 2 notes, the remaining notes of the chord, on beats 2, 3, and 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm stressing the ands even though they're quarter notes, because eventually when you put the hands together and you combine the right hand eighth notes, that's going to make it a little more easy, make a little more sense. In the next measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that repeats on the last measure of page 10. Top 11, you're back to the C chord. Now the second measure, top of 11, the F chord. So make sure you go up to F and A. Last measure on the top line, the G chord, G7. So B, F, and G. Second line, the G7 chord again. And then the first ending back to the C chord. And then it repeats. Bum, bum, bum. So remember, when you repeat, you've got those 2 pickup notes. That's what I was kind of bumping there. Just to let you know, you rest for 1 beat there, and then you're back on it. So when you get to the second ending on page 11, that's just the C chord, but it's a little different. You hit the C on beat 1, and then it's the whole chord on beats 2 and 3. And remember, those are accented. Okay, now, when we put the hands together at the beginning, of course, first thing you always do, make sure your hand position is where it should be. Right hand, thumb on E. Left hand, C chord is outlined. So I'm going to go through the notes here a little bit before I dig into the counting and the rhythms. But remember, you got the right hand playing first on the E and the F. Now, when you hit beat 1, it's a quarter note in both hands. But then beat 2, remember you got this cross under in the right hand. So it gets a little tricky, right? Because now you're combining that with the left hand. You got 2 eighth notes there. Now beat 3 is also a quarter note. And then beat 4, you got that cross under once again. And now the next measure, you're going to change chords. So you got the F in the right hand down to B. In beat 3, you rest. That rest is important because you're going to jump down. Use that rest to come down in the right hand, and then you're on D, E. Next measure, you're still in the same chord. Beat 2, cross under. Beat 3, quarter notes. Beat 4, cross under. Now I'm doing it kind of jaggedy, but I'm breaking it down for you. It's going to be smoother, of course, once we work it up. Top of 11. So E in the right hand, C in the left hand. Beat 3, you're off in the right hand and come down on beat 4. So now you're on C in the right hand. And then the next measure. So it's still C in the left hand, but it's the F chord. So C and E, but then change to F and A on beat 2, and you're on F with the thumb on beat 2. And then quarter notes, cross under on beat 4. Last measure, change it to the G7 chord. Off on beat 3. And you're down to the B for beat 4. Next line, still the G7 chord. Cross under. And then cross under. First ending, we got C's in both hands. E and G. Rest on beat 3. And then you're back at the beginning. You're off in the left hand. And then stay right there. You're on the C chord still. So you see how that works? Now, when you put the hands together, there is a pattern. The quarter notes, all of the left hand is quarter notes. We said that earlier. There's no eighth notes. So beats 1 and beats 3, if you want to look at it this way, of most of the measures, like the first full measure and the last measure on page 10, and then at the top of 11, the second measure, and then the second line, first measure. All those measures, beat 1 and beat 3, you have quarter notes in both hands at the same time. So that kind of helps, maybe, you know. Otherwise, yeah, it's just digging in. It's just digging in. So this is one of those situations where hands separate, easy, not a problem. Put them together, a little more tricky. Go slow. Read vertical. Line everything up vertically. That's the most important thing. Vertical reading, right? Make sure you know when both hands are hitting, or when the right, in this case, no, sometimes the left hand plays by itself, sometimes the right hand plays by itself. So, vertical reading. Either the right hand's playing by itself, the left hand's playing by itself, or both hands are hitting at the same time. Now, sometimes you have holds. So, like on page 10, the bottom line, second full measure, I'm on this F, down on B on the G7 chord. I'm holding right here on beat 2, right? In the right hand, I'm still holding, half note. But on beat 3, I'm off. So that would be only left hand. And then beat 4, both hands. And then the right hand on the and, but notice I'm still holding my left hand. So you got to keep in mind of the holds too. Now with the rhythm, let's go through it slowly with the rhythm. What I would recommend is giving a little count off. So let's do that. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and first ending 1 and 2 and 3 back to the beginning 4 and then we'll stop there. You can keep playing, of course, but just for time's sake. So for me personally, it kind of surprised me to the top of 11, the second measure, the F chord, because I'm hitting the C again, and I just came from a C chord. I wanted to play a C chord again. So you might have to circle beat 2, the F and the A, just as a reminder, in case you feel like I did and not 100% certain. The other thing is, so measure 10, page 10, second measure, page 11, first measure, last measure on the top line. Those are the measures where you have the half notes and no eighth notes until beat 4. So you got longer rhythms. Remember to hold it out. Don't rush those. That's why the 1 and 2 and is so important. It's not just to get eighth notes in, but it's to recognize how long I have to hold these quarter notes and half notes. Make sure I'm not speeding up. So that is just as important. Let's go on to, so you'll repeat it. You remember, you go to the second ending, 1 and 2 and 3 and then your left hand jumps up to middle C, which is an incomplete measure, but it's also technically beat 4 of the measure, basically a continuation of the second ending. Now this is where there's sort of a switcheroo. Your left hand now does this pattern that the right hand did. So you've got C, B, A, third finger. Notice it's not a chord note, it's much longer. Dotted half note. So you really wait on that. And then cross under G, F, E, another dotted half note. And then finally, cross under the end of the third measure, D, C. Now here it's a little different. We got B, B, C, D, C, B, A. No finger crossing under or over there. But then at the end of the third line, you got to jump up. And you do the same pattern again. The exact same thing. C, B, A. Now we're at the bottom here. G, F, E. And then D, C, B, B, C, D, C, B, A. And then last note of the page, G with your fifth finger. Pretty easy. It's a duplicate. Same pattern. Everything. Notice, though, dynamically, because it's exactly the same, the second time you do it, it's marked soft. The first time, it's marked forte. It is melody. Your right hand's not doing much. It's just kind of laying out these open chords. So even though it's soft the second time, I don't know if it needs to be piano soft, maybe mezzo piano, a little bit louder because it is melody. You don't want to be so soft, and then your right hand has to be even softer because you can't make your right hand too loud. Your right hand's not melody. Your left hand is. So if it's a little bit louder, I think that's okay. Maybe necessary. Your right hand really isn't doing much at all. It's playing a C and an A on beats 2 and 3. Now notice staccato. Now even though it says forte for the left hand, remember, that's melody. We're not doing forte in the right hand. You're not doing that. It's going to be soft. It's an afterthought. It's quiet. And it always is C and A, and it always is beat 2 and 3, wherever it shows up. You got these two measures of whole rest, and that's where your left hand is the busiest. So luckily your left hand has a solo there and makes it easier. Now at the very end of the page, it's a little trickier, not too bad. C and A, which is a 6, the interval of a 6. You're jumping up to D and B, which is the interval of a 6, and adding with your second finger an F. So it's the same intervals, right? And with the staccato, you can kind of hop into it and land hard because there's an accent. And then you add the left hand. And there's a fermata, so you get to wait on it as long as you want. DC al fine means go back to the beginning. And we'll end up going to the second ending in the fine. So let's put third and fourth line together, both hands on page 11. So this C that you're playing is the same C that your right hand will catch in just a moment. Now you're coming from here, the second ending. So what I would kind of get used to is both thumbs meeting in the middle, but your left hand is going to be dominant. Your right hand kind of has to be just kind of hovering. But it needs to be there because you're about to play. So get used to coming from here and then jumping down. Now the counting would be 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Now softer. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then you go back to the beginning and take it all the way to the second ending. And that's basically it. So the only other thing, we talked about dynamics at the end. The only dynamics you have at the beginning are mezzo forte. And then you have the accents in the second ending. And that's it. There's no pedal, so that makes things a little bit easier. So the whole point of this piece, of course, is the technique builder, right? The fingering. But I want you to also use this as an opportunity to take advantage of patterns, repetitive patterns. Recognizing patterns is essential to learning a piece of music faster. And most music has patterns of some kind. There are so many different kinds of patterns. These patterns are ridiculously obvious because it's, like I said, the same fingering, the same rhythm, and the same notes. And even in the left hand, it's the exact same thing twice on page 11, just different dynamics. It has to be to make it interesting. Otherwise, if it's the same thing twice, it's boring. I'm going to play through the whole piece for you, repeats and all, slowly. I'm not going to count the whole time because I'm going to end up drying out my throat. But you've already heard it fast. I'm going to play it for you slow. So you have this slow practice tempo that you can put it to. If you want to go back and play it along fast, you can either go back to the beginning of this video or check out the separate video that I will also post that will be nothing but just a performance video of this piece. So, and at the end of page 11, it says, you are now ready to begin Greatest Hits Level 2. I'm still working on Level 1. I have not done a video for Level 1 in a while. And that's okay, because the funny thing is about Level 1, I've said this so many times, I feel like where we're at in Level 1, that's like this level. Now, you're not on pieces there yet where you have these techniques, but in terms of difficulty, like how many notes there are and how much time it takes to practice, you're kind of at that same level. So I've always believed that it's okay to wait, in this case with the Level 2 book, to much later on, you know, but that, if you're ready for it, go for it. I still need to finish Level 1 videos first before I get to Greatest Hits Level 2. So one of these days we'll get there. All right, so here we go. I'm going to play it all the way from the beginning. I'll give you a count off so you can hear the tempo, and then I'm just going to go. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay. One other thing, which I didn't do, and partially it's because I'm playing it slow right now. But one other thing that you might want to do just to make it more musical. Now, it's not marked in the music, but the left hand could be staccato on the first several lines. Of course, that's harder. Now, we've had this concept before, even back to level one of the last songs in there, Singing in the Rain. We really worked on making that right hand smooth and that left hand staccato. Again, they didn't mark it that way. You didn't have to do it that way, but musically it really benefits. And this is the case too, because if you just go through and play this left hand with those longer quarter notes, even if it's not loud, it still has a clunky feel to it. Now, if it's light, it has a lighter feel, and that would allow the right hand to actually, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? The right hand be showcased even more, which it should be. It's the melody. So you see the difference. Again, that's only optional, but I promise you that even though that's harder, it really is going to pay off musically. And I think once you get it learned, you're going to enjoy it more musically too. So, and you can make a choice. You could play it slower in the end and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on that. Or you could just say, yeah, I'm not going to focus on that. I want to focus on making it faster. Or, of course, you could just do all the above. Personally, I think even slower, but still having that is more musical. Speed, you know, to me is like the last thing. I know it's a lot of fun for people to play fast, and sometimes it's a great way to show off. You know, but if you're trying to be musical, make good music, speed isn't necessarily always the number one thing. In fact, it's often not the case. It's the other details. So a lot of things to keep in mind there. But that is an option as well if you want to put that in. And just remember, you're just playing heavier in one hand and lighter in the other. Which is odd because even though you have eighth notes in the right hand, once you have a quarter note that's staccato, that becomes shorter. Right? So, interesting concept. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it if you're more interested in it. There were pieces in the past like Singing in the Rain. I'm pretty sure I did that with Singing in the Rain. I hope I did since I'm talking about it now. But we'll certainly, you know, this won't be the last time we address that because it's a pretty common thing. Pretty common thing when you have this kind of left hand, very chord-like, that you want to kind of keep it light. All right, guys, if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to share, please do. I'm always interested in seeing what you guys have to say, even if I can't respond right away. Eventually, I'll get back with you. I'm looking forward, as always, to the next lesson. And remember, I appreciate you being patient. The good news is we're in a harder level. These pieces take a little bit longer to learn. This one's easier, I think. This one's a lot easier than light and blue. Light and blue is just a lot. So be patient with me if it takes, you know, a little bit of time to get my next lesson up, but hopefully that comes sooner than later. And Christmas time is coming up, so I've still got level 1 Christmas book from years ago. I said I would finish every year, and I haven't. Okay. New Year's resolution, hopefully. Hopefully not New Year's resolution, because then that's past Christmas, right? Anyways, I digress. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you, and I will see you next time.